Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to call our committee the whole meeting of March the 6th to order, please. Council, you do have an agenda in front of you. We just have two items on the report, but I would like to know if you are interested in adding a public input section to each item, or at the end, or not at all. But if I could ask Councillor Berger, please.
Yeah, on my agenda it says item number 5 is that public input to follow each item. On iCompass it's listed that it's already there. Your
Worship, sorry, we did it in a subsequent agenda afterwards. It was omitted from the original one, so we put it on as a proposal for council to have public input after each item, so it would be after the Chief Administrative Officer report.
Okay.
So I have a question.
So, can I just ask my question first, please? Your iCompass has that? My iCompass doesn't have that. And I just refreshed.
Are you on this one, agenda notes?
I don't know.
Or are you on graphics?
I'm going to use paper. I don't see it on here either. Oh, I see. Okay, pardon me. Public. I suppose if I read the shaded area, I would see that. Okay, public input to follow each item. Okay, my apologies. It is there. I didn't see it in the heading. Councillor Casper, you had a question?
Yeah. So, is the reason for the confusion around the procedural bylaw and what's in there and past practice being all over the map?
Through you, through the chair, Councillor Casper. No, that was just an error on our part when we first put it out.
Well, I know, but there, in the procedural bylaw, it's not clearly spelled out elaborately as to what happens at each different meeting, especially when it's public question comment period after items on the agenda. You know, I don't think we amended the bylaw.
No, the bylaw hasn't been amended, but typically public input follows each item, and that's what we see here in the amendment. So on that note, if I could get an approval of the agenda, please, as is presented. Moved by Councillor Parkinson. Any questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we do have a delegation this evening, the RCMP Corporate Management and Comptroller Branch presentation. We received some correspondence last year, and part of that was the opportunity for us to receive a presentation, and just given the time that we required, it didn't quite fit into a 5-minute delegation in a regular meeting, so this way we have a bit more time and it fits into our budget portion anyway. So good evening and welcome, please. I'd like to invite you forward, and if you could please just turn on the microphone there and we'll just let you get right into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Autumn Longley. I'm the Senior Financial Manager for Contract Policing for the BC headquarters, which we referred to as E Division. And this is Sivia Poon, who's the Acting Financial Manager for Municipal Policing for BC. And we did bring a PowerPoint with us this evening. I'm sorry you didn't have it in advance. That's my apologies, but we'd be happy to share it with you afterwards. Thanks. So these are what we'd like to cover with you briefly this evening. We'll go over the RCMP contract and how that works, then give you some information on our financial planning and invoicing cycle, and then go over some of the primary cost drivers for what we call direct costs and indirect costs that are part of your RCMP policing costs, and then a few items looking forward to next year. So the RCMP contract is actually between the municipality and the province of BC. The RCMP is the service provider under the Municipal Police Services Agreement. There is a companion document to the agreement that's being worked on right now with a working group of various municipal representatives and the province, and I'm also sitting on that working group. So we're putting together the companion document to help municipalities understand some of the terms of the contract, give some context and examples for some of the items. So we're hoping that will be available in the next couple of months, and that will be a reference document for your municipality. On a national level, the RCMP contract provides for a contract management committee, and that has representatives from each province on it, as well as the federal government, and they address concerns with the RCMP contract nationally. The contract is roughly the same in each of the provinces. There's some minor changes, but most of the provisions are the same across the country, and that committee addresses concerns from contract partners. Within BC, there's the Local Government Contract Management Committee, and that committee has various representatives from municipalities across BC, as well as the province, and that is a good place to bring any questions or concerns you have about the policing agreement. This is the committee structure as far as who serves on the committee. I believe right now the mayor of Comox is on the committee. That would sort of be the representative for a similar-sized municipality on the island. And we have 2 representatives from municipalities your size, which is between 5,000 and 15,000. There's a cost-sharing formula based on who the contract partner is. In your case, you're subject to a 70-30 cost split, so the municipality is paying 70% of RCMP costs and the federal government is paying 30%. For a municipality between 5,000 and 15,000 in population, we use a per capita charge to calculate your RCMP costs. This is based on pooled costs for all municipalities of this size across BC. So right now we have 32, we call them muni unders because they're under 15,000, and all the costs for all of those municipalities are all pooled together, and then we put the total number of RCMP members in the denominator and come up with the per capita cost. Then your municipality is charged based on that per capita times the number of members you have. Some costs are outside of that per capita. Overtime is the primary cost that's outside, and that's still subject to the 70-30 cost split, but it is charged by municipality instead of pooled together. There are also some costs that are not subject to the cost split. So accommodation, so the detachment building, support staff, so the admin staff working in the detachment, prisoner facilities, office furnishings, those are 100% municipal cost according to the policing contract. There are some items that are not charged to the municipalities at all. The primary categories for that is legal fees, compensation claims, and relocation costs. So whenever we're moving members around in the province, those costs aren't being charged to the municipalities. This just summarizes what I've gone over as far as what types of costs are pooled together for all muni unders across BC and which ones are not pooled or charged directly to the affected municipality. I also wanted to mention, not on this chart is also integrated teams. There are some Greater Victoria integrated teams that Sooke is a member of, and those are also not pooled and would be outside of that per capita charge. I'm going to turn it over to Sivia to talk a bit about our financial cycle.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about how we come up with the policing budget and also how the invoicing works for you. Our fiscal year ends on March 31st, and that is different from your fiscal year end, which is on the calendar year. We prepare a 5-year plan budget every May, and we prepare it 1 year ahead of time. So last May, we would have prepared the budget for April 1st, 2017 to March 31st, 2018. And then coming up in May this year, we will prepare the budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. We invoice you quarterly, and we base that on the budgeted per capita times the full-time equivalent. And what that means is the number of members that you have in your municipality. And then at the end of the year, after after March 31st, so around June, we look at the actual cost that we did incur for that fiscal year, and then we minus out what we billed you to come up to figure out what we should have actually invoiced you. So you're always paying for what were the actual costs. And we have quarterly reports that we send to you throughout the year so that you'll know what the forecast would be until the end of the year. So we monitor those reports, and as well we monitor the costs every month as well to make sure we know what's happening. So as I said, the five-year plans are what we use for budgeting purposes. They're sent in May of each year for the next fiscal year. The most recent one that you would have is for the 2017-2018 fiscal year. These are used for planning purposes by the city and for the federal government to know the 30% that the federal government will be paying for. And it's a very detailed forecast that takes into account the needs of the 32, what we call muni unders, which is what you are a part of. All those municipalities that are between 5,000 and 15,000 in population. And the way we come up with the forecast is that we work closely with the detachment, so your officer in charge, and our policy centers to make sure that we know what might be upcoming for the next 5 years. Some of those drivers would be if we see increase in members, any vehicle costs that would be coming up, computer purchases, things like that. I'm going to go into a little more detail about the costs that we have. We have direct costs and indirect costs. So for direct costs, the biggest portion of that would be pay, allowances, and overtime. So those are significant costs in our budget. And like I mentioned, there's information technology costs, mandatory training costs for members, and vehicles and equipment, and inflation as well. And in the 2015-16 year, this is the year that we have final costs for, so we're using these numbers. This slide shows you out of for the 32 muni unders, we have roughly we budget for 440 or so members, and this is sort of a breakdown with the direct costs and the indirect costs that we have. And you can see the budgeted number there and the final number. And this slide shows you the breakdown of what those types of costs are. As you can see, the biggest portion would be pay. And then the bigger portion out of the indirect costs are member pensions and division administration. And this is a table of the salary range that members are at right now. So member pay will be increasing. The last agreement expired on December 31st, 2014. So they're still negotiating for a new agreement. Right now, for budgeting purposes, we are looking at 2.5% per year that they will get an increase for. And a new agreement will result in retro payments. And for indirect costs, one of the big ones is pension. This is set by a 3-person pension panel. The last increase in member pension was from 20.23% to 22.7% in 2015-2016 fiscal year. That rate stays the same for 3 years, so the next adjustment will come in the 2018-2019 year. The contribution from the member side has also been increasing as the employer side has been increasing. And another significant cost is the division administration costs. In 2016-17, we're forecasting that the amount will be roughly $25,530. And for 2017-18, the budget is expected to be around the $26,400 mark. And division administration costs are comprised of administration overhead. So, for example, corporate management expenses such as myself, I'm in finance, so my salary would be part of that cost. And HR, departmental security, those types of administration costs would be in there. As you can see, that is a smaller portion of our div admin rate. The larger portion consists of leave and health costs. The leave costs would be things like maternity and paternity leave, medical leave, and health costs would be things like extended health benefits such as chiropractor, physiotherapy costs. The leave and health costs are a little bit harder to predict. And members are also becoming more aware of the extended health benefits that they are entitled to maintain to be healthy. So we're seeing those costs go up as well. And we have national programs. Starting in 2015-2016, we've shifted to actual costs for the following items: for police dog services, recruiting, and cadet training at RCMP depot. And this slide shows you what those costs are. So I'll pass it back to Autumn.
Okay, thank you. So just a couple more slides here, just looking forward to the next couple of years. So next year, which for us starts April 1st, there aren't significant changes in our forecasts for next year other than the member pay, which we've gone over. We're hoping the pay package is approved soon, so that will impact our 17-18. As we mentioned, pension rate, it will stay the same for the employer contribution next year. And the current per capita estimate for next fiscal year is $174,580. So that's at the 100%. So at 70%, which the municipality is paying, that's $122,000. And then your contract strength here in Sooke is 12 members. There's a couple of items still under negotiation at political levels between the provinces and the federal government. The first one is the severance payout. So the severance policy was changed a few years ago, and members stopped accruing severance for when they leave the force voluntarily. So there was a payout at that point of any accumulated severance, and they're still negotiating how contract partners will contribute to paying for that payment, the large payment that was made, I believe, in 2013. I don't have the exact date, but it was a few years ago. The other item still under negotiation is our building, E-Division headquarters building in Surrey. That was built about 4 or 5 years ago, and we moved into that building from the Vancouver building, and that resulted in higher costs in division administration, which some contract partners are questioning whether they should be paying for that new building. There was also a legislative change. Bill C-42 eliminated the civilian member category of employee in the RCMP. So as of April 2018, there will be no more civilian members. They will become public servants. This will not impact your municipality directly. You don't have civilian members. We just include that for your information. It may be something you hear about when you're talking with other municipalities. And we'll be working on in the next couple of months on the 2018-2019 budget. That will be sent to your municipality in May. And we don't know if we'll know about member pay yet by the beginning of May. We can always hope, but we may still be in this uncertain time where we're unsure what's happening with that. And one area we do expect to see some increases is in training costs, which is part of that per capita charge. But there's new mandatory training for officer safety, so it has caused increases in training. And that concludes our presentation, but we're happy to take any questions that you have.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's great for us to understand just how it all breaks down and what follows where. I think we're all aware of the 70-30, but there had been questions about things like the accommodation pieces and the like, so it's great to see that. Are there questions from Council? Councillor Casper, then Pearson, then
I just want to say at the outset, and it'll help qualify my remarks, I think the RCMP and our armed forces are grossly underpaid compared to some other emergency providers. Okay. And I feel strong about that. I will always say that publicly, because they're serving and protecting, carrying guns, and they put themselves in danger every day. I strongly believe that. But what I don't believe in and what I don't support is what I view as the level of bureaucracy that occurs within your organization. You can't do anything about it. We, on 2 separate occasions, have agreed to fund positions. One, I think, a civilian position, evidence clerk, to actually free up what could be equal to 1 RCMP officer doing the good work on the street. 16 months went by. Then we agreed over a year and a half ago, we actually gave notice at the request of our local detachment leader, who's done a heck of a job for us, and to fund an additional position. And that position was supposed to be available to us, was September 1st? September 1st. And we've been waiting. So then we finally get told that it's going to be April 1st. But I only think that happened because our mayor wrote a letter saying how disappointed we were in actually doing that. But more importantly, this is one thing that I want to get off my chest. Statistically, we've been advised that there's anywhere between 22, 23, 24% of the calls and the service that is provided out of our detachment, which is a joint municipal and rural provincial service, and that we've been told that we have to pay for 100% of these local issues, the equipment, etc., within the building. And I find that patently unfair, because that means that the province is getting off scot-free as to what their proportional share should be to pay for that service. And with that kind of attitude, I'd say farm those people out, let them get their own building, and let them pay it. Because that's what they're forced to do, where there is an RCMP detachment that only serves an unorganized territory or rural area. So I feel that in many respects we're being taken full advantage of. And I falsely assumed that they were picking up their fair share. And this whole issue came to head when our good staff told us that there needed to be some new chairs purchased. Well, I didn't begrudge the fact on people because of work conditions, back conditions, whatever, buying new chairs. But then we were told that our municipality had to pay the full cost of those chairs, even though some other members from the rural area will probably be sitting in those chairs, which to me was just right out of control. And I know that you can't do anything about it. But I feel there has to be an appeal mechanism, a way to arbitrate these decisions that were foisted upon us some time ago. In early 2012, our mayor had to run down to the Parliament buildings to go and sign the brand new contract. Well, not one of us ever saw it. We didn't know what the heck we were getting ourselves into. And, you know, I've seen it unfold. We get nickel and dime, a little bit here, a little bit there. But what bugs me the most is the huge delays in implementing the service that we are gladly to pay for. We can't do everything, but we do it a piece at a time. So I just want to leave it that way. You know, and I do feel that our police are underpaid. I look at that entry level. No, that's not adequate for what they're required to do. So thank you very much for the opportunity. And I don't think you can answer my questions, but I would hope that the people that you report to hear what I'm saying loud and clear. Because it's not just me. I know that there are these sentiments throughout the province from small and medium-sized municipalities. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor. Councillor Pearson, then Ray.
Thank you. Hard to come on after that. Thank you for your presentation tonight. And again, I echo the sentiments of my fellow councillor there. The disappointment around, you know, us going to the taxpayers because they asked for more police coverage. We don't hesitate charging more taxes or putting it into our base, and then we don't get an RCMP officer for several months later. So, you know, again, we're hearing it loud and clear from the public. They want 24-hour coverage. We're making steps, incremental steps as they are, to get that happening. So that was disappointing. But my question, and maybe you can answer, is the technical piece. So you invoice us quarterly per capita times our FTEs. So is that based on who's actually worked in that quarterly or in that quarter, or is it based on our assigned staff?
It's based on, yeah. So we have a salary forecasting tool that has all of your members and your detachment, and say if one transfers in or transfers out, it has all those dates. Okay. So then it sort of projects what will it be for the full year. So it's not necessarily who was there those particular days, say, you know, September 1st to December 31st, but we're looking at as far as what we know about transfers in and transfers out, or maybe someone on long-term sick, then it forecasts what it would be for the year. So it is based on your actual members, but projected over the year. Okay.
So the short answer is that it's people on the job, and it's alive, and it's adjusted throughout the year. So,
yes.
Okay. So we don't get a bill for 12 members when we only have 10 on staff.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. And thank you for your presentation today.
And I also just want to say that the member shortages and lag in getting new members is definitely something that's felt by a lot of municipalities. So don't think you're the only ones. We definitely hear that from others as well.
Well, I see that there's a funding formula for us to pay for recruitment and training. So therefore, yes, if we're going to pay, we should expect better results, right? And they
are ramping up the number of troops going through our RCMP depot, trying to get more cadets trained.
And the last comment I want to have is, and I recognize you're doing a financial presentation, is we're very happy with the RCMP, or I'm personally very happy with the RCMP response time and Staff Sergeant MacArthur and the work that they do in our community. So
that's great to hear.
It's well, you know, it's a great service. You know, just if we could get some more of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ray?
Yes, thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation. I think it always helps to have the numbers and things in front of us so as we're going through it. My comment actually follows along the same line. My concern has been, and we've heard it, this is my 5th year, if I count right, is it's not so much the members that aren't here, but the members that are here that are off on sick, maternity leave or parental leave, and the inability to staff behind them. And I'm assuming that we're picking up the cost even if they're not here? Or is that prorated?
So the first 30 days that they're on leave, they are considered still at your detachment, at your municipality. After that, they're moved over to division administration. So you're paying sort of a portion of it, but everyone across BC is also paying a portion of everyone that's on leave.
Okay. But just as a follow-up, I think just in terms of messaging back, I think when you have a detachment of, at one time I think it was 15 here in our last term, and at points they were down 3 and 4 people. And I think that really adds to the burnout for our members. It's frustrating for the community. And also when we're only sort of, we're not 24 hours service, so you have members who are then doing overtime and then call out in those hours. My message back to E-Division is looking for a way to support the detachments across the province, particularly in those situations where when you're down a number of people. Because I think burnout is something, particularly in the business that policing is, I think is very detrimental to the health of the membership. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Berger, then Parkinson.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for your report. It's nice to get a large overview. Just again, I'm going to share the same sentiments as my fellow councillors. This is my 8th year on council, and I think I can count how many times we've had the hooray, we're at full complement. So that's a struggle, and I'm sure you've heard it tons. On the financial side, though, just to follow up on what Councillor Casper said with respects to accommodation and I think it was prisoner facilities and all the direct costs. He raised a good point with respects to we're a shared detachment through the 70-30 split. So has there ever been consideration, or is there some sort of policy that says we still, we pay the 100%, or is there a split in those direct costs?
So in your case, it's a federally owned building that the detachment is in. So they take the total costs of the building, and a portion of it is charged to the municipality, and a portion is related to the rural members, and the province is paying that portion. So all building related costs should be split that way. I mean, there may be cases where it gets missed or it doesn't happen for some reason, but in theory that's what's supposed to be happening regarding about the chairs. Yeah, that's right. Any kind of supplies and things in the building should be split based on who's in the building, which is I can't remember how many provincial members you have in your building, but thank you. Yeah. So they would be paying for that, the province would be paying for that portion.
Great. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, thank you. We all have the same concerns as we all sit here, and basically the same type of questions. With the regional district as part of our contingent here, what is the breakdown that they actually pay? Do we know that, how much the CRD is paying versus Sooke for when it comes to the cost sharing of items? So it would be, they would have a separate budget from us, or no? Or does it all come on to us?
I'm not sure which costs you mean by that are
with
CRD
the 4 members.
Costs. Okay,
So with the 4 members.
So for the rural members, okay. Mm-hmm. So their budget is all covered under the provincial
100%.
contract. So it's
100% through the province then?
yes. So I mean they have a federal cost share as well. So the province pays 70% of their
Correct.
policing costs, and the federal's paying 30%.
And then when it comes to like the furniture and the costs like that, then does the CRD have a budget where they pay a portion of it, or do we as a district pay the 100%?
I believe they would be paying a portion of it. I don't have the details of that, unfortunately. I don't know. I'm going to pass it over to the staff sergeant here who has a better idea.
So their portion would actually be from our provincial budget.
Okay.
So we'll have to, I mean, it's a good point raised by Councillor Casper. We'll revisit the chairs issue. but when we did originally visit it, categorically 100% municipal cost, but maybe there's some redefining needed there. And then there's a little equivocating that goes on with the 70-30 split. Now, the 70-30, even if we didn't have a rural area, it just has to do with the population of Sooke.
Right.
So it's 70 we're paying and 30 that the federal government or the combination pick up that. So simply because we're under 15,000. Now, when it comes to the split of people, or of RCMP officers, it's actually, so it's now 12 and 4. It's going to be 12 next month when we get the new member. So there's actually 25% is rural or CRD members or outside of Sooke, and 75% are inside. So we do, I carry 3 credit cards, and one actually is for expenditures that charge to both.
Right.
You know, one's provincial, one's District of Sooke charges, and the other one splits it up. So we'll go back and look at if we can do that with the chairs, because it is a significant expense, that's for sure. But originally, that was our advice. Now, and just if it's okay, Your Worship, I just wanted to touch while I'm, so I don't interrupt our presenters here any more than I have to. One thing that was brought up by yourself and Councillor Pearson with respect to, and I think, again, if a member is on paternity leave or sick leave for a quarter of the year, we're only billed, the District of Sooke's only billed for 75% of the year, correct, for those salary dollars. So at the end of the year, and I'm actually doing this tomorrow, I do a reconciling, and I make sure, if you're wondering who always gets stuck with 100% of the salary dollars, it's always the province. If there's 2 members who, say, worked 6 months of the year, and 6 month they're going to be on the division admin code, which we don't pay for. It's those are going to come to a Sooke. I adjust our human resource management system so that we get the offset, and the province always get 4 members at 100% at the end of the year. I don't think it's any secret that I do that. I think detachment commanders everywhere do the same thing, so that there's savings, you actually do get them. So, and then, as we were discussing earlier, when we do have vacancies, no, there is no backfill, and yes, it does cause us stress at the office, and there's a lot of grief as a result, and we wear our members out with overtime. And the overtime dollars, though, those are where the calls come in and where we have to deploy the members. If that's Jordan River, then it's provincial, and if they come to Sooke, then you're picking up a large amount of dollars as a result of paternity leave, sick leave, if that helps at all. You're probably aware of that. Yeah, hopefully that explains it a little bit. But
I have one more question with that.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Parkinson.
I was going to ask, when it comes to population, do we combine the outlying area with the population of Sooke for the detachment? So that Sooke is 12,000, but the outlying area is 2?
Over 13,
yeah. Right? So would that make it go over 15,000 quicker then by adding the 2?
We would only include the population inside the municipal boundary for determining whether you're over or under 15,000. And then the population in the rural areas would determine how many resources the province would put towards the rural policing.
Okay, thank you.
we wanted to advance the idea that you might want to build a wall when you hit 14,999, but that's a political decision.
Councillor Pearson?
No, through your worship to Staff Sergeant McCarthy. Thank you for that explanation. And so again, it's at a disadvantage because we're going to pay the overtime at 100%. And if we had an extra member to reduce the overtime, we'd only be paying 70%, right?
Yes, if that member was to cancel all the overtime.
Well, not all of it, but even at that, an extra officer, we're only paying 70% of the actual costs. And if we pay overtime, we're paying 100% of the costs, right?
You're getting the cost share on the overtime as well. It's just not pooled. So
okay. So
yeah,
mathematically,
so you still only pay the 70% of it.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I was just thinking that mathematically we lose, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyways, thanks for that.
And of course, the overtime, when we have vacancies or we're down, we try and use it as judiciously as we can. But you're right in that regard. And then, yeah, I'd have to agree with you. And then another point that I didn't touch on, I don't want to belabor it, but our corporate management presenters here were talking about, and Councillor Casper talked about our salary dollars. Is that going to, that doesn't look like that's going to get solved. And what is the impact here? Well, it's going to impact, labor problems. I'm not running into them. We have a very good crew here, but we probably will experience it if it drags on a lot longer. You see from the funding formula, you're paying for recruiting, you're paying for all this kind of thing. Well, you pay a lot for that, and then for a one-year member to go to Calgary, and then we run a vacancy for a while because it's pretty lucrative. Like I make as much money as a Victoria Police constable does, right? So there's that kind of leaking going on, as well as just some of the other peripheral problems that come from that. So that needs to probably be fixed, and it's good to hear that there's a little bit of sentiment that way. Yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Casper.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased that you're going to look at those issues again on the cost sharing. So let's say if there's overtime being built up because headquarters can't supply the positions, do we have to pay 100% of that? Or is that taken into account when you do your reconciliation? Because I don't begrudge paying overtime if we get a full complement and that's demand. Mm-hmm. But if it's through things that are outside of our control, then why would we have to pay it? That's how I look at it.
You make a good point. That is the way it works. So you would be paying for the overtime. But you do get the cost share on the overtime as well. But
I tried.
Not in the per capita, yeah.
Right.
But I think, yes, an additional member is, a good idea.
The additional member, and you're correct to note that the mayor's letter on that caused somebody in Ottawa to go looking and found the federal letter of approval. So maybe you know the rest of that story, but that was the holdup, was just getting the authorization for that 30% funding, which normally is just a stroke of the pen, and it was just sat there for months on the desk of someone who was sick. So that did hasten that up, and then that member is arriving here mid-next month.
They did send a letter back acknowledging that they got my letter.
I know, they said they were sorry. Right?
Yes, they did. So letter writing helps. Question from our CAO, a comment?
More of a comment to all of Mayor and Council. UBCM does have some committees that are set up for different size communities to provide feedback to the provincial government on this contract. And if I can ask staff to make mention of that, that would probably be helpful because I think the appointments are coming up soon.
Sure, yes, that's the Local Government Contract Management Committee. And I know UBCM coordinates that committee, so I think right now they're sort of selecting members for the next term. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline. So.
The selection has been done, so
okay.
I anticipate it's just the formality that follows that, and there'll be a rise in report.
Okay.
Yeah. So are there any other questions or comments from council? Anything at all? Yeah. Thank you very much for coming. If you could please provide the PowerPoint to our staff, that would be great, because the figures and all that are very helpful for us. We certainly look forward to receiving the budget when it comes forward to us in May, and we appreciate you traveling over here. I understand you've come over from the mainland, so I'm not sure if you have to catch a ferry this evening or if you're...
We are visiting Campbell River tomorrow. So.
Oh, okay. So are you here in Sooke for the evening?
We're not staying in Sooke.
Oh, too bad.
Sorry. But.
Just saying, we have a number of excellent restaurants, though, if you're able to catch a bite before you hit the highway. So drive safely, please.
Thank you very much.
So that'd be
Yes. Actually, before we move on to the next item, we do have the public input piece available. We do have a couple of residents here. You can work your way through the crowd, please.
Hello, Mark Whiteson, 6845 Beaton Road in Sooke. Going through the highlights and listening to the police report, there's clearly plenty of things on your plates and agendas. But, you know, there was no policing on here. And obviously with the duration of time between getting approval for an officer, even if it's going down because it was sitting on the desk for a little bit, and with the increase in population and with the increase in crime that we're hearing about and seeing, and some of it is serious crime, you know, with firearms. So I'd like to know, and also with the population going up, you know, it makes the problem even harder because you've got a plan for the day when it's 15,001 and suddenly it's about, what is it, $50,000 extra per officer. So while I appreciate all the beautification, it's all lovely, I don't think any of us can argue that safety and security of the electorate, of its citizens, is the #1 priority of any governing body. Regardless of any other priority, safety and security really needs to come first. And I would like to know what short-term, medium-term, and long-term planning you guys are talking about, because if it's not on the agenda and with some of the questions, maybe it's not on the topic as often as you'd like, you know, or discussed as openly. But it's a priority, and I think it should be right near the top, somewhere in here. I don't say it's an easy solution, and I don't expect maybe the answers tonight, but if it would be unreasonable to expect maybe in 8 weeks' time for you to have a short-term, a medium-term, and a long-term plan on how we're going to be going forward with policing within this town without massive tax increases, which may have to compromise some of the beautification and some of the projects, you know, but if you look after the pennies, you look after the pounds. And that's why I was not against horseshoes per se, but the horseshoe pitch for the looking after the pennies and not looking after the pounds.
Okay,
So,
just to answer your question, Mr. Whiteson, we are entering into, we have this coming Wednesday and Thursday kicking off our budget discussions, and so we'll be receiving all that information tonight, and we'll be going through it at that time. It is a 5-year plan, so it's not quite long-term, but it's sort of short and medium, depending on how you define that. And in that category, there's always the protective services element that's built into that. So we would be discussing it at that moment. And that's where we've set aside a reserve fund for when our population does increase, the funding for the administrative person that Councillor Casper referred to, as well as our additional police officer. That all happens in the budget planning cycle. So that will come later on this week, should you be available to attend.
sorry, working, I'm sure you'll miss me, you know.
Maybe, we'll see.
And, you know, hopefully the topic of extra officers, because it's not just the safety and security of the citizens. When we're down fewer officers and they're tired, they're working harder, the crime's on the increase, the population's on the increase, it's also their safety and security that we should have in mind too, just as an afterthought.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much.
As for doing this without a tax increase, we'll have to see.
I didn't say it was going to be easy, nor
We'll
possible.
have to see.
You know, but it's about prioritizing and maybe being a bit pragmatic and losing some of the projects that, well, are nice to have.
Yep.
Maybe
no, we
have to go
understand.
on the back side. But as we know, it's lovely having flowers and all sorts in your garden, and your house looks lovely. But if the bathroom's not working, the kitchen's on the fritz, and there's holes in the roof, please don't come in, is a completely different message.
No, fair enough. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll move on then into our next item. We have our report to come from our Chief Administrative Officer. It's there's a PDF file and a provided report, and I'll turn it over to our CAO to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to provide a little bit of an outline of what this report is and what it isn't. It is not intended to be an annual report where we talk about the the performance of the district in the past year and what we're looking forward to in the future. This is intended to be a report that frames our budget discussions for this year and our 5-year financial plan. The report's intended to highlight some of our historical trends and the effect growth is having on our community, and pressure put on the district through conversations and complaints with respect to service levels. We are, in this 5-year plan, taking into consideration when this municipality or the district becomes a city, and you'll see as we move through our budget deliberations that we have smoothed out the 5-year plan. So no longer will you see, say for example, the last 5-year plan, there was an increase of 18% in tax. We've smoothed out all the spending over the last, or for the past 5 years in this budget cycle. So you're going to see a real 5-year financial plan that's been considered by our Director of Finance, and I have to commend him on the work that he's done to this budget and the presentation, because it's one of the best budgets I think I've seen ever. Yeah, he's done a great job. So for the next census we're coming out is 2020. If we continue with the growth that we're hitting right now, it's likely we will hit city status. That will probably cost us over $450,000 in policing. And that funding formula that we're just talking about right now, that's when we hit city status and costs go up. So we've smoothed those costs over 5 years. Let me see. Okay, we're also anticipating the future costs, current costs of IAFF negotiations, but we're heading into CUPE negotiations next year as well. And so what we're trying to do is take those anticipated costs and continue to plug them into our 5-year plan. On Wednesday night, I'm going to provide a little bit more of a budget overview before we turn it over to staff to introduce their departments. And that budget overview we'll talk about resources, available resources, our fixed costs, which are the costs of doing business, i.e. increases to hydro and the like, just to pay the bills and keep the lights on. Our council commitments, which you've already made in previous years, but also your council priorities that you've identified in our last strategic planning session. We have 2 years till the next election, and what I'm going to be encouraging Mayor and Council to do is pick off those projects that will likely, A, have priority for our community, but also be doable in the next 2 years. Because right now, the list of strategic priorities, as you can well imagine, is quite long. So we do have limited resources, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on what you guys want us to do. Service levels. The whole purpose of us introducing the budget this way is that we need direction from Mayor and Council with respect to significant service levels, i.e. we're a growing community, we have increased demands, we have a sewer system that's near capacity, and we are going to have to start making decisions now on expansion and whether or not you support that and where, because it's going to take us 2 years to get there. And we don't want to wait 2 years for a decision, because then we're going to be, hanging out to dry with respect to providing services to our community. We have roads that are in dire need of repair and or replacement. You see that on Appendix A. And one of the things in my report that I highlighted was the dramatic increase for calls for service. And the areas for those dramatic increases are basically our roads and our drainage issues. So people are complaining bitterly about potholes, falling apart roads, safety issues for kids going to school, and the like. It's not all bad news. We do have some opportunities to diversify our tax base and create different revenue streams, and we'll be introducing those opportunities as we move through budget. So I guess if I just go over to the report itself, like I said earlier, I didn't make this an annual report. I just wanted to have highlights on this, on the key areas that we need some policy direction from Mayor and Council. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. You will be receiving your budget binders at the end of tonight's meeting in preparation for our budget discussions on Wednesday and Thursday night. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for the verbal report and for the written one that was submitted. Questions from members of council? I think we're all just waiting to get into the budget deliberations, and hopefully we can move through it succinctly. But I certainly appreciate the highlight report. It gives us a start here. Anything from members of council at this time? We have our 2 meetings scheduled for this Wednesday and Thursday. At this time, I know that there's been emails back and forth. Can I just get clarity on who is here or not here on Wednesday and Thursday?
I'm here Wednesday, Thursday.
Right. Councillor Parkinson, you're only here Wednesday. Councillor Casper's here both days. Pearson is here.
Or Thursday, not Wednesday.
Thursday, not Wednesday. So Thursday only, okay. Both days and both days. And I believe Councillor Loggins is here both days, I think. Okay, just confirming quorum through everybody. And then we have next Monday. Okay, great, thank you.
Well, I'm here for all the days in March.
Your microphone isn't on.
Sorry, I'm here for all the days in March.
We're in March, except for this.
That was sent out originally.
Okay,
So,
right, you're here both days. It was Councillor Parkinson that's missing a day.
but
and
there's
Councillor
still the rest of March too.
Yep.
Yes, it just depends on how quickly or smoothly or slowly we move through everything. There's been a number of days that staff has set aside for us as needed. I know that Councillor Parkinson is going to be away on leave, so that's why I felt as much that we can move through before she goes would be good. But I understand also I don't want to rush the process if there's concerns that members of council have. So just roll up our sleeves and get to it. Anything else from anyone? Any public input on this item, or were you able to cover it in the first item? Okay, you're good. Okay. Okay, so on that note then, please, look for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Pearson. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.